Do you ever wake up in the morning and think, I look 10 years older today? That happened to me the other day. In fact, it happens to me quite frequently, actually. I feel like I'm about 95 right now. But if you want to make yourself feel a little bit better, if you want to make everything look a little bit less drooped, a little bit more elevated, I have 8 tips for you that I've collated from absolutely phenomenal makeup artists that I'm going to share with you in this video today to make you look 10 years younger and just more lifted and sculpted. First things first, if you have mature skin, it's really important to prep the skin. However, there is a big however. Oils are my friends at the moment, especially with me having such dry skin. I do have an oily T-zone, but I do have dry skin everywhere else. And oils underneath the eyes are a huge no-no if you're going to be applying any sort of concealer that is water-based. If you're applying oil underneath the eye, that oil will never dry down because it's an oil. It will continue to hydrate, it will continue to nourish, but it will also affect the integrity of your concealer. It will make your concealer not dry down, and it will make your concealer move and crack and crease all over the place as the day goes on. So your concealer might look absolutely fantastic on first application, but an hour later, maybe 2, not so good. Instead of using oils underneath the eye, which will disturb your concealer, I like to use a really hydrating under eye patch to really pack that under eye full of hydration. It'll really plump it up, smooth out all those wrinkles. My favorite one of the moment, in fact, my favorite one of all time, is from Charlotte Tilbury, and it's the Immediate Eye Revival patches. These are superb. Let's talk primers and mature skin. It is really important that you apply the correct primer for your skin type, and that doesn't mean just applying one primer, because if you have mature skin and your skin is like mine, I have different skin types all over the place because my skin likes to play with me. So I do have an oily T-zone, so I need an oil controlling primer in my oily T-zone, but everywhere else is quite dry, so I like a really hydrating and nourishing primer everywhere else. So it's really, really important that I'm not going to apply an oil controlling primer all over my skin, because in those oily areas, my skin will look fantastic because those oil controlling properties will really help my oily skin. But in those drier areas, my skin will look even more dry, even more flaky, and probably a little bit patchy because my makeup will cling to those dry areas even more. My favorite mattifying primer is from Me Cosmetics. This is the Mattifying Face Primer. It is so good at what it does. It really holds the oils at bay for me if I apply it just in those areas that I need it. If you're wanting a more affordable alternative, Collection Mattifying Primer Matte Finish will be my go-to. This is such a great product and so similar in consistency and feel to the Me Cosmetics Mattifying Primer. My favorite nourishing and hydrating primer is the Vitamin Enriched Face Base from Bobbi Brown. This is a cult classic, so good at nourishing and hydrating, giving you that richness and smoothing off at the same time. This isn't too rich that I can't get away with wearing it during the day, and especially as my skin gets even drier, this just gets better and better and better for me. If you're after an alternative that is way more affordable, then Revolution have done a little bit of a copy of this, and it is so good. Next tip, and I think this is self-explanatory, I think we all know this by now, only apply concealer where you actually need it. The older I get, the more crinkly and crepey my under eye skin becomes, but it's not the wrinkles that make me look older. For me, it's the bluey purpley tinges that poke from underneath the skin, because as we age, we lose a lot of skin density underneath the eyes. So anything that's sitting underneath the skin, any blood vessels, any discoloration, that will poke through much, much easier and become more noticeable. So just covering up that bluey purpley tinge will already make you look 10 years younger. You don't need to whack a load of product on underneath the eyes, because the less product that you're applying over that crinkly and crepey skin, the better your eyes are going to look throughout the day. If you apply too much, you're just going to see every single line and create more. Let's talk about one thing that so many people with mature skin struggle with, and that's setting the concealer underneath your eyes. Now, I used to take a powder puff and just go in with loose powder underneath my eyes, and that was absolutely superb. But once again, as I'm maturing, that just doesn't work for me anymore, because the looser, the crepier, the more crinkly my under eyes become, if I'm just pressing down with a powder puff, I'm sort of sealing the surface of the skin, but inside those bits of crepiness, those fine lines, none of the powder gets in there because of the pressure that I'm applying to the skin. So the first thing that I would do to rectify that is go in with a really fluffy brush. This one may seem a little large, but I absolutely love it. It's the Nikki LaRose brush from BK Beauty, the N14 brush. I apply quite a bit of powder to this brush, and then I dust off all the excess and dab it on the back of my hand. Tap it underneath the eye. No swirling motions. You don't want to hinder any of the concealer that you've just laid down. Just tap, tap, tap. Make sure that all the powder is in the gaps of any crepiness or any wrinkly skin that you have under there, to make sure that those little creases are set in place. Any concealer that are within those creases now won't move. And then I take the smallest bit of powder on my powder puff, tap that on the back of my hand, and then pad that in place. I do find a powder puff does have a really good place in my skincare routine, because it really does smooth off the under eye skin. But I now have to do the first step with the brush first and then go in with the powder puff, and I just find I get so much of a better result that way. Let's move on to eyeshadow tips. I am going to do a full video on eyeshadow blending for beginners. That is coming in the very near future, but just a couple of tips that will help you get a more lifted, sculpted, elevated look, and once again make you look 10 years younger in the eye department, without creams, without lotions, without potions, just with a little bit of makeup. So 10 years ago, I used to apply my transition shade directly in the crease, or windscreen wiper motions, just back and forth, and that was enough for me. It looked perfect, but not anymore, because my eyes are starting to look a little bit more droopy. My hood is getting a little bit more hooded, so you can't really see a lot of the shadow that I place when I'm doing it in that way. So instead, to give the illusion that my crease is slightly higher, probably in the same position that it was 10 years ago, I apply the shadow slightly above the crease and blend up towards the brow, giving that more lifted effect. Next tip for the eyes, I always recommend a winged liner. A winged liner is always going to change the shape of your eye slightly, and with little tweaks here and there on placement, you can make your eye look more lifted. So a while ago, I would have gone right from the outer corner of my eye and gone in the same direction as the angle of my lower lash line and just created that little bit of a wing, and that would have been enough. Unfortunately, everything's looking a little bit more downturned now, so by following that lower lash line, I'm actually making my eyes look more droopy than actually lifted. So instead of it going in the same direction as my lower lash line, I lift it slightly just to give the illusion that my eye is more upturned rather than downturned, and it seriously works. You don't need to use an eye pencil or a liquid eyeliner for this, which can be very tricky on more mature skin. I use an eyeshadow because that will get in all the little creases around the eye, and it's so easy to apply and really easy to blend. Let's move on to a couple of contour and blush tips. So many people with mature skin are afraid of contour for good reason. I think depending on the placement, you can look a little hollow, a little bit skeletal. So it's really important that you know where to apply it, how to blend it to give you that more lifted, elevated look. 10 years ago, I used to apply my contour directly underneath my cheekbone, and that worked for me because nothing was saggy, nothing was droopy. Now it is. I need to lift that contour up and blend in an upwards direction to lift that cheekbone even more. I do like to apply a contour, but I go for more of a bronzy bronzy contour now because I just think that's more flattering on my skin. For blending out my contour, I used to use a fresh, clean brush, which I thought was the right thing to do at the time, but it can make the blend a little bit harder to do and it can make your contour look a little bit muddy. Instead, I now use the same brush that I've used for my foundation. So there's a little bit of foundation on there and it just makes your blend so much easier. It's also quicker to do, it looks more natural and much more seamless. You can quite easily see how effective just placing that contour shade a little bit higher actually is when everything is blended out. Moving on to blush placement, I've got a full video on blush placement for your face shape. I will link that at the end of this video for you because it really used to irritate me when makeup artists used to say if you've got mature skin you can only apply your blush in a certain place to give you that lifted look. Not everybody wants a lifted look. Some people want to make their cheeks look rounder, some people want to have more fullness, bounciness, so it's not one size fits all. So if you are interested in different methods of blush placement, definitely check out that video at the end of this one. But I always go as one rule of thumb, never mind where you're actually going to place your blush, place it a little bit higher than you think you should. I used to apply my blush just on the apples of my cheeks and on the low apples of my cheeks. There is nothing wrong with placing blush on the apples of your cheeks when you have mature skin, but just apply it that little bit higher than you used to for a more elevated, more lifted, more youthful, fuller appearance. And finally, let's talk lips. Lips are a huge thing for me. I never used to have to wear lip liner. In fact, I never used to have to wear lipstick, but now I've lost a lot of pigmentation in my lips. I've lost a lot of definition in my lips, and the sides of my mouth are starting to look a little bit downturned, and I definitely don't want to emphasize that when I'm applying my lipstick. I did a video a couple of years ago on how to get plumper, fuller, less downturned, more youthful looking lips, and I will link that video at the end of this one. I got all my tips in that video from Lisa Eldridge, who is an absolute superstar. She is the queen of makeup application, but I'm just going to take a couple of tips from that video and share them with you in this one. I used to apply lip liner and lipstick all the way to the corners of my mouth, and I never used to overline my lips, which is a regular thing for me in my makeup routine now. But the way that I do it now is instead of going all the way to the corners, which can really emphasize that downturn right at the corners of the mouth, I go slightly in and then slightly overline from there to the top of the lips. I also do the same on the bottom lip, 1/2 centimeter in from the corner of the mouth, slightly overline all the way around and then connect the dots. It really does have quite a dramatic effect. Instead of honing in and emphasizing that downturn, you're actually disguising the downturn and highlighting plumpness and fullness. So that's it. Let me zoom you in on a close-up of my face. You can clearly see the difference by just tweaking my makeup routine slightly, and it is only slight changes. I've gone from droopy, a little haggard, a little tired, a little dry and crusty to uplifted, bouncy, more youthful. Just a few little changes makes the world of difference. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. Please let me know what you've thought about it in the comments section below. Also, you will find a list of all the creators and makeup artists that have helped me with these tips and tricks over the last few years. They've really given me the confidence and the tools to help to tweak my own makeup routine to elevate it to the next level. So hopefully through them, I've been able to do the same for you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe before you leave, and hopefully see you all in the next one. Bye everyone.